Want to talk about knife handles. Got some different style handles here, and I'll show you what I like and don't like and why I do like it and don't like it. Now, I've never really had a problem with any handle style, but there's some things I do and don't like about different handle styles, and I'll show that here. There's some talk about in the world about do you need a guard on one, and is a guard better or not? And I'd say that all depends on what you're doing, how you're using the knife. If you're doing a lot of stabbing and stuff, you'd for sure want a guard. But start out with this one right here. It was a gift to me. I don't really carry this style of knife, but I call this like a tactical folder. I've carried this one a little bit. It's a lockback. You can open it with one hand. I see this more as a knife you'd just take out and cut something with and then put it back in your pocket. Now the reason is because it's really angular. The handle's not very comfortable because this angular. It's a tough handle, impervious to everything, the tactical style. Got the clip on it to put in your pocket, and that's good and fine, but then there, when you're using it, that's hitting the side of your hand. So, to me, this style right here is not made for extended use, but it's good for what it's good for, and that's just pulling it out, cutting open a box, or cutting something, some cord, whatever, and then put back in your pocket. Moving along to this little knife was also a gift to me, and the reason I brought this one is it really has no guard either. It does have that little bit of a flange right there, but the Puko style knives that have been used for years and years, they came out through this way with even less than that. A lot of them didn't even have a flange or anything, and some of the Japanese style knives the same way, and their edges actually came all the way back to there. This one has a bottle opener and a wrench for a fishing reel or something like that. And this is a little fishing knife somebody gave me. I hadn't used it yet, but I only bring it to show that style of handle. And this is pretty comfortable. It's a little short, but for the size knife, it's good, and for what you're doing with it. Thinner that way, thicker that way. Holds real good in the handle. Got this little plastic sheath, kind of like a Mora style sheath. Now I have used this knife a good bit. So talking about guards and all that and whether you need them, I've done a lot with this knife. Cut into a lot of animals, cut up stuff, skinned stuff, and it basically to me has no guard. This right here I wouldn't consider like a real guard. It's more just of a finger notch, kind of a if bushcraft knives kind of have that sometimes, but this is no bushcraft knife. It's a hunting knife, but you can see the taper on that handle and the pinch points right there. Then the notch for your finger there. It's good in a lot of different holdings that you'd use for hunting. You can get your finger out on the end of it. And I've never felt like I was going to slip up on that knife and get cut when I've been using it. Just the design of it, even though it looks like it's got no guard, it's never been a problem for me. I never felt like I was at any disadvantage. It's done everything I needed to do. Next up the line, we have this skinning knife here. This is basically a hunting and skinning knife again there. It has a little more of a guard built in, but it's thin on the front up here. That's good when you're pinch holding like that and skinning something, cutting up meat and all that. Really comfortable handle, Coke bottle shaped handle, thin on the front. But this part right here does kind of catch my finger there, and if you got gloves on or something, that part can kind of catch your gloves. One good thing about it is the edge when you're holding it is right close to your hand, so you can put a lot of power in that. But there again, that don't really matter if you're doing the skinning and all that. But I'll just point that out as a feature on handles. Here's one that's really the only Bushcraft style knife that I really have that you'd say this is Bushcraft knife. Got the point in the center and everything for drilling and all that. This don't have a real strong guard on it. It's got a generous handle. I like it. It's got a really good shape. There again, kind of a Coke bottle-ish shape, but it flanges out a little more at the top. Good in all holds. Not as secure as some others, and you feel like if you're drilling that you could slide up. And the back of it here, I'd rather actually have a knife that's rounded off a little more back here. That's a little bit square. But overall, this is a very comfortable knife when you're holding it like that, only if you're drilling, which I hadn't done a lot of drilling, but if you're going to drill, that does have an angle there. I think rounded off back there would be a little better. But one thing that did happen to me on this knife, I don't always just hold my knives just with a death grip, just gripping it as hard as I can. Sometimes the knife's just laying in my hand like that, kind of loose, and if I just go to put it in the sheath or anything, one time for whatever reason in the middle of working and stuff, I went to either lay this knife down or do something, and the tip of it hit something, and my hand slipped up there and I cut my finger, because I keep them razor sharp, and it was really sharp then. It was even newer, and so I did have that happen with this, with that level of guard on there. Maybe that's just user error, because like I said before, I really never had a problem with any knife without a guard. Going on up the line, show a couple here. Right there is a really nice handle. This right here may be my favorite handle. It's got a pretty good guard right there built in. You can have that knife any level of grip or loose in your hand, and you don't feel like it's ever going to slip up. You never feel like a problem. Do anything with it, and it's really secure. On this one, it does have that notch, but with that style handle, some of them don't have quite that much notch. You still get the working surface down here pretty close to your hand, but that's a really secure, good thick handle. I really like that handle, and I'll leave that out for the next thing here. This handle is exactly the same style, but it's smaller. It's still thick enough. The thickness on the two handles is a little different. The bigger one's a little thicker, but they come in different thicknesses and stuff. But this one over here is just a little bit shorter. It's really secure in hand. There again, the same working relationship. But this back here tends to hit my fingers if I'm holding it that way. It's a little bit shorter than I want. It's pretty angular back there again. And so this one here, this is more of like a utility knife. It would be good for hunting, bushcrafting, just anything. Utility, these two both. But this size is a little better for me, just more generous. And then all the way up the line, we have this old style with a double guard on it. This old style of knife, it's kind of like an old Bowie style. Just that old style hunting knife like you'd see from years ago, maybe back, well, I wanted to say into the 70s. That's not that long ago, but even before that. But just that old style hunting knife. good for practically any kind of hunting or anything like that, just all around knife. Now this handle looks kind of roundish, but it's thinner that way. It tapers to the front and it's thinner that way than it is that way, so it's really solid in your hand. That ain't going nowhere no matter what you do. If you want to choke up a little bit, I just put that through my fingers and I can do work like that, peel apple or anything I want, whatever you'd want to do. You can really choke up on this knife too. It's really secure. That's the most secure in my hand, that nothing's going to happen no matter what I'm doing. But my favorite overall would be this right here. It's got enough of a guard that it's really secure and comfortable in your hand. You're not going to slip up on that and get cut. Now, I mean, I can make myself slip up to there a little bit on it and not even get cut, but yeah, when you're using that thing, it's really secure in your hands. It just lays in your hand. Your fingers got that to go against in the front there if you want to job something, if you're scanning. Just all around a good design of a handle. I think that right there is my favorite for all around use. But there again, I don't believe you have to have a strong guard on them to be real safe, depending on what you're doing. If you're stabbing a whole lot, you probably would want a stronger guard. But you can do everything you want to do with a regular knife that don't have a strong guard. But there again, there's my favorite. I didn't go into handle materials. That wasn't what this video is about. It's more style. But that right there is my favorite handle style. Just adding one more bonus on the end there, I've got up my old pocket knife here. It's an old Puma 3-bladed stock knife, and I've done more work with that thing than any knife I've got, only because you just always have this thing with me all the time. I can just pull it out of my pocket. I have cut up a mule deer. I found myself in a situation out in the woods where I needed to cut up a mule deer, skin it, cut it up and carry it out, and I did the whole thing with only this knife. That even folds, basically no guard, and never had a problem with like cutting myself or had any problem doing the work, just even with that old pocket knife. So it can be done. It's not going to fly out of your hand or anything. I've skinned out a few white-tailed deer with that thing when I'd be somewhere and a buddy of mine hunt or something, and I just had this knife in my pocket, and I said, hey, I'll just skin it out for you and cut it up or whatever. And I've used that on a lot of stuff like that, skinned a lot of animals with that blade, cut up a lot of stuff. And even though it folds and has no guard, I've never had a problem with it. But there again, this is not something you'd pick if you're going to do extended work as far as carving or anything, because the handle's a little bit small in your hand. You're hitting these blades. So there again, that's something more you'd want a fixed blade with a really nice contoured handle. But this works, and you can get the work done.